Every week, Moral Maze, where we discuss issues that are of enormous concern, because I do realise that, well, Senate reform. How many articles have you read about reform of the Senate, and how many of them did you finish and think, oh, that was so interesting? Did you really? We think some issues, many issues of morality, life, sexuality, are a little bit more significant. Tanya Granick Allen joins us. You used to have one name, now you have two. It's very interesting.
I can go by either.
Or both.
I'm not married to either name.
But you are married. This is very worrying, but I think inevitable. Pedophiles want same rights as homosexuals. Gay people, whatever our view of homosexuality, consenting adults should be able to do whatever they want to do. It's not my business. I mean, marriage is, but it simply is not my business. Pedophilia cannot involve consent. A child cannot give consent. How can a pedophile claim that they're the same test, the same morality as a gay person?
Well, that's a good question you raise, Michael. How can they? And it's really destructive when we see that children are not being protected from pedophiles. And then in this
Are they not really?
Well, they're not. When an American psychiatric group is advocating for a change in the way we see pedophilia and calling them, rather than pedophiles, minor attracted people. Like, it's so absurd.
And this is the American Psychiatric Association.
Yes, a group within the American Psychiatric Association, composed of psychiatrists, is advocating for this.
Influential, and they're not arguing pedophilia is a good thing. They're saying it does exist and we should understand it more. But just employing a euphemism, no longer pedophile, but what was the phrase again?
Minor attracted people.
What's the acronym?
Like,
MAP?
I suppose.
MAP. I mean, why? Why did they? The language should be harsh. It should be ugly. It's a horrible thing.
Well, it is a horrible thing, and I hope that society does step up and continue to protect our young people, and that the full extent of the law is used. And you know, when we hear of pedophilia, I mean, we should look to helping an individual, and I would hope psychiatrists would, rather than try to enable pedophiles to access their prey, rather than help rehabilitate them and help steer their issues.
Yeah. Psychiatry, it's fascinating because if you go to a doctor and you have a bone sticking out of your arm, he's not going to say, I wonder, how did you get on with your parents? I mean, it's quite obvious what's wrong with you. Now, doctors sometimes fail. When it comes to mental health, and I know psychiatrists, wonderful people, but it's not tangible, and sometimes they do not know. And there are psychiatrists who, frankly, are completely bloody mad. And they seem to make it up as they go along, and they have different people. No, it's Adler, and, it's Freud, no, it's Jung. And they like to be interesting and important, and they think this makes them important, that we're going to change something which ordinary people find repugnant and repellent, paedophilia.
With absolutely no concern for the victim, clearly.
Yeah, I've certainly limited empathy. Army, Air Force, I assume this is the US, to stop selling porn magazines. Well, I didn't know they did sell porn. Who buys porn magazines anymore, young lady?
Well, apparently well, first of all, this is a feel-good one because we won one. So yes, they're stopping the sale of porn and sexually explicit material on Air Force and Army bases in the U.S. I hadn't known that they actually did sell this, and I'm actually quite shocked that the government resources were being used to sexually charge our troops.
Well, they're true. Well, I'm not American, but Playboy, Penthouse, and people. I know quite a few book dealers and lovely people, and some of them, part of the stores, it was pornographic magazines. And one guy said, oh, it's really tough nowadays, he said. He wasn't English, but it's really tough because, a third of my income was in used pornographic magazines. I shudder to think. But people don't buy them anymore because they go to the internet.
They go to the internet.
So, how many magazines were they selling when all these guys can get to the internet?
Well, sadly, this feel-good story is tainted with some negativity.
Yeah.
One of the reasons they stopped selling it is because sales were down. Demand had decreased.
By the way, the other two things he said he doesn't sell very much of anymore were cookbooks and encyclopedias. Because, again, it's on the internet. Anyway, Irish president signs abortion into law. Now, this is a week or so ago. But Ireland, the Irish Republic, one of the last bastions that said life is life. And that country has changed radically in the past 15, 20 years.
It's quite a shock, especially because this party that signed the legislation into law campaigned saying that they would never legislate for abortion.
Oh, they're liars. Oh,
yeah, so not surprised, but here we are. Abortion is now allowed for women in their cases where they feel their life is threatened or in case of suicide. And speaking of psychiatrists, the psychiatrist who testified in Parliament said that abortion should never be used as treatment for mental illness.
Yeah, this is an interesting point. And by the way, it was voted in overwhelmingly, but this is a notorious case where, and I don't think people reported on it properly, but a woman did die. But when suicide, if I can't have an abortion, I'll kill myself. Well, I'm sorry to be cynical, but there'll be all sorts of women who say, if I can't have this abortion, I'm going to kill myself. And a lot of obliging doctors who do want abortion will say, of course, and they'll sign off on it.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And that's the fear really in Ireland now, or the pro-life groups are fearing that this essentially is opening the door to abortion on demand. So yet again, we have a group of children essentially going to be marginalized and executed because of who they are and who they're born to.
Yeah. I honestly did not think, growing up in Britain and Ireland, and we knew what would happen. Irish girls would go across the border, often across the water, either to Northern Ireland or to Britain. But when they've gone through so much and so much oppression and famine and forced diaspora and so on, and losing so many people, and now they're going to introduce abortion. Their population is small anyway, and
they're literally killing their future.
Yeah.
And Malta's the only country now in Europe that still has abortion completely outlawed.
And you're half Maltese.
I am, so I'm happy to report that.
So you're half right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.